Most traditions of Buddhism agree on one thing, namely that you want to achieve a state of equanimity through your practice. However, people do not agree at all about what equanimity even means. To various different people, it means various different things, and more often than not, people explain it as a type of pleasure. However, that is not how the Suttas portray equanimity. Today, we try to find out what Upekkha or equanimity truly means. To get an intuition on the problem, let us start with a few myths surrounding the word. And among the most popular modern ideas of equanimity would be the pleasure of jhana schools that define each of the higher jhanas as a more sublime state of mind that feels even more pleasant. They start with the first jhana and strong pleasure or piti, and then move along towards more and more refined types of pleasure. In a sense, they, eat their fill and stop caring for a specific kind of pleasure and look for something else. It is not too different from literally eating a lot and then losing interest in food and looking for something else like relaxation. It should be quite obvious that getting what one wants does not weaken the underlying value of it at all, even if it helps to mind other kinds of pleasure. So if you eat the most sublime kind of food, you will lose interest in gross types of food. But you are still kind of addicted to food, if that makes sense. Yet other people overshoot the mark in the exact opposite direction. For them, equanimity or upekkha means, or has a meaning, that is akin to indifference or apathy. You simply lose interest in everything in the entire world while maintaining a subtle kind of cherishing of that very state of aversion. You think that you have to be like that. You think that you have to suffer through it to purify pretty much your experience. In a sense, they start delighting in the bad feeling, and they think that it has to be like that to make progress on the path, even if all the suttas pretty much say otherwise. Yet, there will be some throwing away of prior values that might resemble indifference, but in essence, equanimity is absolutely not apathy or emotional numbness. But how do the suttas define equanimity? What would be an actual good translation for the Pali word Upekkhā? Well, and the suttas go as follows. And how, Nanda, is there the supreme development of the faculties in the training of the noble one? When a mendicant sees a sight with their eye, liking, disliking, and both liking and disliking come up in them. They understand liking, disliking, and both liking and disliking have come up in me. That's conditioned, cause and dependently originated. But this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity. When the liking, disliking, and both liking and disliking came up in me, and then up in them, ceases and equanimity becomes stabilized. It's like how a person with clear eyes might open their eyes and then shut them, or might shut their eyes and open them. Such is the speed, the swiftness, the ease with which any liking, disliking, and both liking and disliking at all came up in them, ceased, and equanimity became established. In the training of the noble ones, this is called the supreme development of the faculties regarding sights known by the eye. And the sutta repeats the very same statement in various different ways with various different sense inputs. And it continues as follows. Just as if there was a mountain of rock, without cracks, without fissures, one solid mass, and then from the east there were to come a powerful storm of wind and rain. The mountain would neither shiver nor quiver, nor shake. And then from the west, the north, the south, there were to come a powerful storm and wind and rain, and the mountain would neither shiver nor quiver nor shake. In the same way, even if powerful forms, cognizable by the eye, come into the visual range of a monk, whose mind is thus rightly released. His mind is neither overpowered nor engaged. Being still, having reached imperturbability, he focuses on their passing away, and even if powerful sounds, aromas, flavors, tactile sensations, even if powerful ideas cognizable by the intellect come into the mental range of a monk, whose mind is thus rightly released. His mind is neither overpowered nor even engaged. And this is from Anguttara Nikaya, number 6.55. So as you can see, this state of equanimity is something rather neutral, I would say. You are simply not disturbed by whatever comes your way. It's not that it is a type of pleasure. Initially, it might even be, as you are no longer touched by things that have previously made you suffer. And as a result, you feel relaxed and at ease, and there's a certain type of bodily pleasure that is accompanying that. And this type of equanimity is more akin to a state of immovability of the mind. No matter what comes in the way of the mind, may it be good or bad, you do not become excited or drawn in by it. Instead, you remain composed, and the mind does not give in to lust or aversion. In a sense, the mind has noticed the drawback of such things and won't go there anymore. It is simply too dangerous. And this is something that the Suttas repeat over and over again. There is a real danger when trying to cultivate this attitude of equanimity in isolation or without having cultivated the rest of the path beforehand, though. Just like samadhi is the culmination of cultivating and making much of the Noble Eightfold Path, so is equanimity the natural result of the culmination of samadhi. In a sense, you don't even have to try, and neither should try, to do your equanimity or anything like that. Instead, it will naturally arise as a result of your training without having to make any effort to do so at all. It is only natural for equanimity to become established in one whose mind is rightly trained, as, for example, Anguttara Nikaya number 11.2 states. All those, let's say, emotional reactions to the training arise rather naturally, simply because this is how the mind works. When you remove something oppressive, there will be lightness. That's just how it is, and that is accompanied by bodily pleasure that fades away after a time, etc. But I have repeated that or stated that in many videos before. And this is best described by the natural steps you move through once your mind becomes free from the hindrances through your right practice for a long time that includes your entire lifestyle. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the meditation on the cushion. It simply means that you purify your experience from any traces of greed, aversion, and delusion on all levels. And once unified, you experience great relief, as you are no longer oppressed by craving in its 3 different ways. The Suttas explains this very well by the similes concerning the freedom from the 5 hindrances that I often repeated. And based on that relief-born joy will arise. Based on the joy, bodily calm will arise, and the mind starts feeling at ease. And all of that culminates in a state of samadhi, in a state of concentration, and that in turn is at some point maturing into equanimity. And only when the mind has naturally moved through all of that will you gather in a state of samadhi, when there is nothing to be done really. Then you are no longer sick, imprisoned, indebted, or lost in a desert. As a result, what manifests is a profound state of being unburdened or simply healthy. That is a good way of thinking about it. Healthiness. You do not even notice your healthiness unless it is challenged. That is kind of the point here. You do not even feel it really. It's just a state of well-being, a state of ease, a state of healthiness. And the joy of the path does not last forever. It cannot be repeated unless you willingly drop off the path again and then jump back on. But I don't think that anyone would be doing such a foolish thing. The path has given you exactly what you have been looking for all the time, namely peace. Even through your prior sensual engagement, you wanted peace. You wanted the craving to go away so that you can be at ease. That's all that you ever really wanted. And now you have it by not wanting anything at all. And who would throw that away just to experience some pleasure again? That would be utter folly. Most people who say such things have not attained peace at all through the practice. So they still go back to different types of sensuality and have to repeat their meditation experience all over again, every single day, for hours on end. And every person in the entire world is, at least unknowingly, always looking for peace, ease, healthiness, and safety. We are just clumsy in our approaches to get there. Most of us simply give in to sensuality to gain a tiny bit of peace once we got what we wanted. Only that we have to get back up for the next thing, well, usually not much more than a second later. Even if you attain pleasure on the cushion through modern jhanas, it will not last. You always drop back off and have to restart again. You have to repeat the same thing over and over. And the Dhamma goes beyond all of that. And true equanimity does not simply end like that. This is not a state once made much of and trained well that simply ends. And the Suttas explain it as follows in the simile of the leper. It goes, suppose, Markandeya, there was a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs of the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. Then a physician would make medicine for him, and by means of that medicine the man would be cured of his leprosy and would become well and happy. This is the state of healthiness that I was talking about. And then suppose 2 strong men would seize him by both arms and drag him toward the burning charcoal pit, where he was previously cauterizing his wounds. What do you think, Markandeya? Would that man twist his body this way and that way? And he answers, yes, Master Gautama. Why is that? Because that fire is indeed painful to the touch, hot and scorching. And what do you think, Markandeya? Is it only now that the fire is painful to the touch, hot and scorching, or previously too was the fire painful to the touch, hot and scorching? And this is from Majjhima Nikaya number 75, in case you want to read it up. And as you can see, the leper is a simile or a comparison between a person who is healed from sensuality, so to speak, and a person who still engages in it. The leper burns his wounds over a fire pit to gain some kind of relief. And this is what we all do by engaging in sensuality. It makes the pressure towards a delicious cake, a significant other, some tasty food, some tasty sense experience, anything really. It makes that pressure go away for a very short time. And as a result, you experience a tiny bit of relief. And this is what we usually get from engagement in sensuality. But people do not really like to think about it that way because they cherish their cravings. They really like them and only look for the reward at the end that gives them that tiny glimpse of peace. However, if you would truly be healed and there would be no more pressure, then there would be nothing to go after anymore. So yeah, you attain a state of healthiness. Yet why is such safety even possible? As the simile said, we would not want to go back after we are healthy again. We would twist and turn and try to stay away from the danger. This is simply because of the Four Noble Truths. In understanding them, we understand exactly how we have been fueling our suffering all along, and in the process, obviously, learn how to stop it, simply by not doing it anymore, simply by not fueling it anymore. And that, knowing the way out, gives rise to a tremendous relief. And the only reason freedom from suffering is possible is because we have been creating our suffering, fueling our suffering in the first place. And once you notice that you do your suffering, there's an immense relief and you stop your unhealthy mind from running free for the most part. There still are remaining habits that we have cultivated for a long time, and those make us forget from time to time. And a Sotapanna is like a newborn calf, as the Buddha said in the Suttas. There's still a lot of work to do until arahantship, and this work depends on your efforts. You could get lazy and make slow progress. Dream entry is the beginning of the path, even though it is close to the end from another perspective. Yet now you know the problem, and that it is the main part of the suffering. If you know the way out and just have to perform the actions, well, you will still be very relieved. And while it might not be too politically correct and surely has some weaknesses, I like to compare the entire training, the upadana that leads to suffering, to obesity. An obese person has a set of behaviors that leads to his obesity. If they want to get rid of their obesity, they must first stop those actions, and as a result, their body has time to heal. In a quite literal sense, an obese person requires constant fuel or food to maintain their obese state. While there might be underlying views or problems that cause their overeating, it is nonetheless very clear what they must do and what they must not do to get out of their state of obesity. And it is very important that even if they stop eating for a while, in the case of a person who is suffering, even if they stop suffering for a while, they could still in the future engage in behaviors that make them obese again. They could start eating again. And the Dhamma is about not doing that again, ever, and making it impossible to ever go there again. And a person who is suffering is in a quite similar situation. They too have a set of behaviors and actions that keeps them in a state of suffering. If they would stop those, their minds would slowly heal. They would reach a state of equanimity. And in this case, all actions that are rooted in great aversion and delusion are the fuel that keeps suffering alive. It is the most direct, proximate cause, the most direct fuel for suffering. Yet, just as with the obese person, there is another underlying cause or fuel for repeatedly acting out of the three poisons. Not that underlying fuel is what the Dhamma is all about. First, you need virtue, which is basically purifying your conduct, purifying your actions, and then you can remove the initial fueling of suffering sufficiently. And based on that, you can understand what lurks below, and that can finally uproot suffering. The teachings on dependent origination. But before that, you must pretty much, through your conduct, through your own effort, remove the majority of your suffering so that you can actually start seeing. But anyway, this should be enough for today. Let us now come to the most important points. First, equanimity is often viewed as pleasure or apathy, quite the overshooting or undershooting. It is neither, and more of a state of being unburdened, a state of lightness, a state of ease, a state of healthiness, that you barely even notice after a while, at least when it matures. It is not that you have to constantly meditate on the cushion and repeat that state of equanimity or anything like that. It is that your entire life becomes equanimity. You are simply unburdened, untouched by whatever is going around you. You are no longer swayed by the winds of the world, by the weathers of your emotions. You are like a boulder in a storm. Whatever emotional weathers are thrown your way, you are not touched by them. They are so insignificant from your no higher vantage point. You are relieved to know the way out of suffering, and nothing that previously made you suffer can touch you again. And Upekkha, or equanimity, is no magical sublime pleasure. It is a state of healthiness that the mind has now attained at all times. You do not forget the way out of suffering just because you are not meditating. So that relief and that ease stays. And you reach that through a practice that includes your entire life. It is a lifestyle kind of practice approach of non-craving. If you crave the remaining hours a day where you are not on the cushion, like even if you crave the meditation on the cushion, then you would not experience this supreme state of relief, simply because there's always a sense of lack. And this sense of lack can manifest on very subtle levels. And it's very important to keep that in mind. But anyway, this should be enough for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoy what I do, feel free to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube things. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.